As our living planet drifted on the sea of eternity, soon after the dawning of the 20th century, the winds of change began to blow. Events were to take place which would change the course of mankind forever. The atomic age had arrived. As man detonated weapons of immense power, lights started to appear in the sky in a way that suggested that something was following the course of events. The shattering thought imposed itself that we were perhaps not the only inhabitants of the universe. Since the beginning of civilization, we had been watching the stars, never dreaming that they, in turn, might be watching us. History was about to change.
Because these lights appeared suddenly in the sky over Washington on July 20th, 1952, moving from the White House to the Capitol, hundreds of people witnessed the extraordinary event, and it left them stunned. The lights instantly jumped from one position to another. They were also observed by high military officials who knew what the lights were trying to say. The public had never seen anything like this, whereas the military had already a long history of involvement with these alien visitors, but had kept it from the public. An immediate emergency meeting was called to formulate a plan to divert public attention away from the occurrences. From that day on, it was decided to place the subject under the highest classification of security. Then came the first announcement to mislead the public made by Chief of Air Intelligence, Major General John Sanford.
We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any agency of the United States.
From that day on, the biggest secret of the century began. How did it all start? After the first atomic bomb was detonated, more tests were made of the effects on the environment and human subjects to gauge the degree of contamination unleashed. No knowledge of the devastating long-term effects existed at this time. Here in New Mexico, an army base close to a small town called Roswell became the focus of attention on July 2, 1947, when Bill Brazel, a farmer, found a crashed disc-shaped craft on his land. The military arrived on the scene and quickly isolated the spot when they found debris scattered over a wide area. They also found 4 dead humanoid alien bodies who had been ejected from the craft. Because of many recent UFO sightings by the military, they accepted the existence of visitors from outer space who obviously possessed a technology which was far beyond our understanding. Now, for the first time, they had tangible evidence and were eager to learn its secrets. Roswell was the home of the 509th Bomber Wing, the sole American atomic bomber group. Major Jesse Marcel, an Army intelligence officer, was engaged on the recovery operation and asked Walter Haut, the Army public relations officer, to prepare a story for the local newspaper.
He told me to prepare a release with basically the information that he gave me over the phone. When it was done, to take it into community and hand deliver it to the 4 news media we had in Roswell at that time, which is what I did.
The story was published in the local paper. The news was also prepared to be aired by the local radio, but Judd Roberts, the radio station manager, was warned not to broadcast it. Sorry.
The question that we ran into is the very next morning, some friendly person, probably from Clinton Anderson's office, called us from Washington and said, we understand that you have some information, and we want to assure you that if you release it on this matter, because it's not supposed to be released, it's very possible that your license could be in jeopardy, and so we suggest that you not do it. And he said, when I mean in jeopardy, like maybe 3 days.
Preparations were made at Roswell Army Base for the transport of the wreckage. Robert Shirkey witnessed the secret handling of the parts.
They came in the front door, straight down the hallway, and right out onto the ramp to climb into the airplane. And these were the people that were carrying parts of the crashed flying saucer at that time, UFO today, that I got to see. And that was the only thing I got to see. And it was very short, very quick. Colonel Blanchard, in order to get out of their way, had backed into the doorway of the ops office. And I stepped up to him and I said, "Colonel, turn sideways. I want to see too."
On instructions from the Pentagon, Thomas Jefferson DuBose and General Ramey created a cover story saying the crashed object was a weather balloon.
But we used that in order to assuage the curiosity of the press.
The wreckage was loaded back onto an aircraft and flown out under cover of great security and secrecy to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The pilot kept silent for several years, but informed his wife after the story appeared in a newspaper.
I guess now that they're putting in the paper, I can tell you about this. I wanted to tell you for years. He said, "I want you to read this article because it's a true story." And I not only know that it's true, but I'm the pilot who flew the wreckage of the UFO to Dayton, Ohio.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was considered the most technologically advanced research center in the United States. The wreckage of the Roswell crash was dismantled for analysis. The matter was considered of such importance that the orders came directly from President Truman. Under the cover of the CIA, Truman created a group called Majestic 12 for dealing with and covering up all information about UFOs. President Truman gave the task of handling UFOs only to the highest-ranking generals. After the Roswell crash, a special group of scientists was formed and facilities built to be prepared to deal with any further UFO crashes which would occur. Wendell Stevens was a lieutenant colonel in technical intelligence in the U.S. Air Force and is now a UFO investigator.
Now having an extraterrestrial vehicle and some bodies in their hands, didn't know when the next one would come down, where they came from, what they were going to do about it. There were a lot of unanswered questions. And the United States was in a turmoil at the time administratively because we were shifting from a war economy and a military-industrial command structure to a civilian structure. So the military was still dominant, and they wanted to keep control of this until they knew what was happening. So they created, and remember, General Marshall was our Secretary of State at the time. He was a four-star, a five-star general. These people selected certain representatives from the military-industrial complex that they controlled, generals and admirals and certain scientists that worked with the military and worked with industrial planning. These men were designated as a task force to take charge of any event that followed. And one did. Almost a year later, on the 25th of March of 1978, the next one came down, 1948, the next one did crash, and it came down under observation by radar, so that we knew where it landed at the time that it struck the ground, and a helicopter was over it in less than an hour. It reported what it observed, and the plan generated by these people from the military-industrial complex after the Roswell crash was immediately put into place. All of the generals and admirals and advisors and scientists were contacted and ordered to proceed to a base in Colorado, where they were picked up and driven to the crash site. Now all of these men have gone to the scene to see for themselves what an alien vehicle looks like, and they were going to advise General Marshall directly, who was controlling everything from remote position from telephones, on how to proceed. And when an operation is that big, you can't cover everything up. We discovered that the owner of the property where the vehicle came down was arrested in his house with his family, and they were kept in the house for 4 days, not allowed to go outside or anything. All the roads in the area were blocked. All access was closed. People that lived close enough to know something about it were kept in their houses. Now, if it never happened, then this evidence wouldn't exist. But now we are finding solid evidence that something strange did happen and that these events actually took place. Then we found people who observed the recovery of the craft from a distance, that saw the task force moving across off roads over country to a secure military facility at Los Alamos. And with these leads, we were able to turn up other witnesses, all of whom had been sworn to secrecy by their superiors at the time they participated in these events. And only a few of them would talk to us, and only on condition that they not be identified because of their vulnerability. What happens in a case of violation of security oaths of this nature, they could lose all pay and allowances due or ever to become due. They could be imprisoned. They could be fined a lot of things that none of them could stand.
Through Secretary of State General Marshall, the security of the UFO situation was intensified. A closer relationship developed between the military and Majestic 12. As time passed, the power of Majestic 12 grew stronger. Virgil Armstrong was an intelligence officer with the CIA and worked with highly classified assignments. He retired with the rank of major.
I received documents which said that a UFO had landed in the middle of White Sands, New Mexico proving grounds, and that this object was inert, was under surveillance, and would be kept under surveillance until they could determine whether it was hostile or friendly. It later turned out that it was friendly in that the occupants were dead, and when we got aboard there were 5 bodies. The bodies were diminutive in size, in other words 3.5 feet. The largest one was just under 4 feet. 2 of them were obviously the commanding officers because 2 of them wore epaulets on their shoulders. Later turns out that they were all male. When we flew them back to Wright-Patterson, of course, the examination, physical examination, and the autopsy, of course, revealed that they were indeed all male.
From descriptions given by several witnesses, the aliens have very large eyes, a small nose, and a small mouth. They are usually about 3 feet 6 inches in height and have no body hair.
Now, consider, if you will, the position of the United States government at this time. They proudly thought of themselves as the most powerful nation on Earth, having recently produced the atomic bomb and won World War II with it. They had built a jet aircraft that exceeded the speed of sound in flight, or would, in October of '47. They had built bombers with intercontinental range that carried weapons of mass destruction. Now, imagine what it was like for these same leaders, all of whom had witnessed the panic of the Orson Welles broadcast in the War of the Worlds in 1938. Thousands of Americans panicked at a realistically presented invasion of Earth. But imagine their horror as they actually viewed the dead bodies of the real aliens. Imagine their shock as they tried to determine how these saucers were powered and could discover no part even remotely similar to components they were familiar with. No cylinders, no pistons, no propellers, no vacuum tubes. It's only when you fully understand the overwhelming helplessness the government was faced with in the summer of 1947 can you comprehend their perceived need for a total, thorough, and sweeping cover-up to include the use of deadly force.
Increasing numbers of civilian witnesses reported seeing UFOs between 1945 and 1950. Among these, many reported personal contact with aliens who look exactly like us and had come in our best interest to guide us through our problems and warn us against taking the wrong direction.
Many of our race already exist on your planet, living and working among you for the purpose of giving advice and guidance to a limited number of individuals with whom they make contact. The people contacted know we are among you, and have been chosen because of their awareness and understanding of the higher cosmic laws.
Your society is not yet ready to be made aware of our presence, but as your evolution progresses, we will reveal ourselves. Your authorities persist in trying to entrap our kind with the purpose of obtaining knowledge for aggressive means. This cannot be permitted to occur, and is the main reason for our secrecy.
President Truman ordered a heightened level of security after the capture of a live alien from a UFO which had crashed. Because of the ever-increasing numbers of UFO sightings at the time, it was decided to create a project called Blue Book, which was designed to suppress public knowledge and create an atmosphere of ridicule around the subject of UFOs. Professor J. Allen Hynek was a professor of astronomy and an astronomical advisor to the United States Air Force on their UFO educational program.
And I know the job they had. They were told not to excite the public. Don't rock the boat. And I saw it in my own eyes happen that whenever a case happened that they could explain, which is quite a few, they made point of that and let that out to the media. Things that the cases that were very difficult to explain, they would jump handsprings to keep the media away from it. For they had a job to do, to, whether rightfully or wrongly, to keep the public from getting excited.
A live alien was captured in 1948 after a UFO crashed in America. He refused to communicate for 1 year and was given the name EBE, or Extraterrestrial Biological Entity. He later began to communicate and gave details of his home planet. EBE had a large crystal which he linked to his mind telepathically and was able to communicate with his own race. He was also able to see into the past and future and perform many other amazing feats. He told of believing in the universe as the supreme being and stated that his race lived in harmony without wars and had nearly eliminated all diseases. He said they lived to approximately 800 years of age and that their technology was far in advance of ours. The authorities were amazed by the things they were shown through the crystal. EBE was able to communicate with huge spaceships which were holding orbital positions thousands of miles from the Earth. He told them that their craft were capable of reaching areas in the universe beyond our imagination, and that they were operated by thought control coupled to biological computers, and consequently did not have any control systems as we understood them. He talked about his planet and how their technology had created a system where everything was self-functional and did not require a workforce to operate it, and that everything was monitored from a central control system. He said that technicians were present there. He said their power source was eternal energy from the cosmos. He told them that his race didn't have a government like Earth, but a society governed by wise elders who sat in council to make decisions of policy. They did not have a monetary system because the needs of the people were catered for by the Federation, which made them all equal. At the request of the aliens, a meeting was arranged with President Eisenhower in 1954. It took place amid tight security at a secret location. At this meeting, negotiations took place regarding the permitted presence of the aliens on Earth. Eisenhower told the aliens that the world was not yet ready for them.
Eisenhower witnessed an alien demonstration of technology and power at Muroc Dry Lake, which is now called Edwards Air Force Base. I believe we made a deal, and the deal was that in exchange for super technology, super weapons technology, we would agree to ignore the abductions that were going on. He made it more military-oriented than, say, a civilian president would have. And it's this, I think, that has let his actions let the real power of the executive office slip through the hands of the president into MJ-12. The President of the United States does not have a high enough clearance to know the whole thing. And it's interesting to note that above top secret, there's 38 levels of clearances. Eisenhower's the last president to have a full briefing on the alien problem. There was a disdain of elected officials throughout the intelligence and military communities, and they just didn't like elected officials. So every president since then has not had high enough clearance to know the whole problem. Now they know there's aliens, they know we've recovered saucers, and they know that we're trying to get technology. But there are certain other things which probably only about 25 people on the face of this earth know.
When members of our race visited the Earth, we told you we had a technically and emotionally advanced order who had made the mistake of permitting our technology to stifle our emotional role. Through the course of time, we had become totally devoid of any emotional instinct and were unable to experience love, hope, or joy. The result of this was a race which had become totally mechanical and had lost the reason for existence. We need help, and we looked to the human race for help, because we realized that all the higher emotions were still alive on Earth. We requested the facilities and material biological assistance necessary to transfer the DNA to our race, to assist us in evolving again. The loss of our emotions was a gradual process which came about silently, without us being aware of it, until it was too late. We now realize that emotion is the greatest gift any creature can have, and without it, existence has no meaning. We need to feel the joy of love and beauty, and to be able to be happy or sad, or even cry and show affection to our own kind. To bring back the spirit of friendship and loving harmony to our world.
It is rather problematic about talking or analyzing possible reasons for extraterrestrial visitors. What is the purpose? What are their intentions? If we speculate about the motives of extraterrestrials, we can only do it from a human point of view. However, we must really accept also the possibility that extraterrestrials are, from their mental makeup, from their psychological makeup, so different that motives cannot be compared. They may be completely unemotional in investigating human civilization. They may have no emotions like pity. They may have no emotions like happiness. So the speculation is difficult.
When coming down to Earth, it ceases to be free space, with systems to monitor every move.
I happened to see flying saucer on several occasions on the radar. I even intercepted with 4 jets in '55, and it was clear to me that the saucers we intercepted could hear what I told the pilots, because they reacted on my instructions to the pilots. It was one day when one of my people in the radar called me and said, "Major," I was captain at that, "Captain, we have something on the screen which passes with a speed of 18,000 kilometers per hour. Impossible. Nothing could fly with that speed. I went out there, yes. They were passing with 18,000 kilometers per hour. All of a sudden, after some while, they did not pass anymore. They were stationary around the field. And they came and they left without we could see it. All of a sudden they were there. All of a sudden when the sweep came around, they were gone. I contacted the operations officer and the station commander. They both came out and they wouldn't believe me. I said, "Give me 4 aircraft and I'll intercept them." Okay. Sometimes there were about 20 objects around the field, and sometimes we were down to a few. It was fog, and therefore a lot of people afterwards said, oh, it was inversion, but it was not. It's proven afterwards it could not be inversion, which is a meteorological phenomenon. So at 11 o'clock I had 4 jets at the runway, and at 11 o'clock the fog lifted so we could take off. And I ordered the 4 jets to take off. In that moment there was 12 objects around the field. And when I said you are cleared for takeoff to intercept unidentified flying objects, 10 of them went away. Right when the sweep came back, there was only 2 left. One 10 miles north of the field, one 15 miles south of the field. I sent the 2 aircraft to the north and the 2 aircraft to the south. 2 aircraft to the north came first, and I said, your boogie, which is the object, is 12 o'clock straight ahead. 12 o'clock, distance 5 miles, altitude unknown. Do we have it in sight? Gone. Came the next one. When it came up, I said, your boogie is 12 o'clock, range 5 miles, altitude unknown. Do we have it in sight? Gone. So it was clear they could hear what I said.
But while the visitors monitor our every move with their superior technology, being technically advanced does not always ensure their own safety. This was proved by the UFO crash in the Kalahari Desert in 1989. One of the most documented cases of all time referred to a 60-foot wide spacecraft which was forced down on the border of South Africa. This craft impacted with the desert at high speed, causing a crater 450 feet in diameter and 36 feet deep. Official military documents revealed that the craft entered South African airspace at 1:45 p.m. on the 7th of May 1989 and was intercepted by 2 Mirage jet fighters. Because the craft failed to respond to communication, one of the fighters was ordered to attack the craft with an experimental laser cannon. This caused the craft to lose altitude and crash.
After the craft was retrieved, it was removed to a secret Air Force base, and on arrival at this base, it was found a door had partially opened in the side of the craft. Hydraulic pumping gear was brought to the scene, and the door was forced open. When this was done, 2 aliens staggered out of the craft, and it was found that one appeared to be seriously injured. They were immediately arrested and removed to a medical centre, where a medical team was sent in to try to assist. The authorities at the scene entered the UFO, and hieroglyphics were found inside the machine, alien hieroglyphics of course, and various items of electronic equipment were also removed from the craft. The retrieval team from America arrived eventually, and the object plus the aliens were eventually taken by C-5 Galaxy transporters back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where further analysis was taken on.
When the military entered the craft, they quickly removed portable equipment and instruments, some of which were considered useful as potential weapons. This was not certain at the time, but was clarified after scientific investigation. Also found aboard the craft were a series of hieroglyphics, which indicated that the aliens had a written form of communication. The writing gave the impression of an alien alphabet, but it is not known if any of the scientists present were able to understand its meaning. Data found on the craft were stored on a system of silicone slides. It was obvious to everybody at the site that they were dealing with a very advanced technology, including the propulsion system. As more and more alien technology comes into the possession of our scientists, more understanding is being gained about the physics involved in producing propulsion systems capable of taking man deep into space.
The American Naval Deep Space Command, who also call themselves the Guardians of the High Frontier, are responsible for the location and identification of all objects in space around Earth. It's their claim that they can track and identify an object as small as a football at a distance of 30,000 miles. They refer to unrecognized tracks as unidentified orbiting objects and have been known to locate up to 6,000 of these in a 3-month period. Their area of responsibility lies outside the Earth's atmosphere. Below this level, the monitoring of the sky is taken over by NORAD, which is the North American Air Defense Network. Larger radio telescopes are on station throughout the world. They can scan the heavens to distances of hundreds of light years. This network of space surveillance ensures that any object heading towards the Earth can be tracked from a vast distance. As an object approaches, it is monitored throughout its journey. If any object should land or crash on Earth, the contact point is known immediately, and quick response teams swiftly arrive on the scene. This network was created after the Roswell incident, and since that time has developed into a sophisticated search and retrieval operation. Quick response teams are located in strategic positions throughout the world. Once there, they isolate the area and ensure that the public is kept unaware of sensitive incidents.
All over in NATO, they are interested. It's generals and colonels. The Americans are interested. The English are interested. Everybody knows about it. I was one in Wiesbaden with one of the squadrons down there, and I worked with a colonel. And one afternoon, I was going to nearby town. I don't remember the name. And I went to the office in civil clothes to pick up something, and he was sitting there. "Hey, Major," he said, "where are you going?" "I'm going to city." "What is that?" He pointed. I had my badge here with a flying saucer on my blue jacket. I said, "What?" "That, damn it, that." I said, "Nothing. It's a flying saucer." I said, "It couldn't be. You Americans have proven they don't exist." "Shut up," he said. He took the telephone and rang. "Jack, Pete, come on down." And in a sudden, we had 5 officers and himself. And we talked for 3 hours. And they knew exactly as much as I did. So everybody knows about it. And it is not illegal. And you are not disliked. I have talked with generals for hours, not on my purpose. They asked me to talk with them about it. They have received my magazine, UFO Contact, for years. So they are interested, but since the public opinion is secrecy, they can't go any further.
Although many years have passed since the beginning of the UFO era, the veil of secrecy has remained to keep the public uninformed. Despite the suppression of information, millions of people throughout the world are still seeing and reporting the presence of UFOs in our airspace. And many more millions are now firm believers in the presence of extraterrestrial flying machines. They know that UFOs exist.
I think what has happened over the years, the government has lied so much that they have painted themselves into a corner, and it's almost impossible for them to tell the truth today.
The biggest secret in the history of mankind, and the government is not going to let this out. There is no way to get anything out under the Freedom of Information Act.
In Russia, the subject of UFOs is now out in the open. Marina Popovich is a retired Russian cosmonaut and fighter pilot. During her military career, she was twice awarded her country's highest military order, Hero of the Soviet Union. She is now one of Russia's leading UFO researchers.
10 years ago, people only made jokes about this subject. Now the attitude to UFOs is very positive. The majority, 80%, think there is extraterrestrial intelligence and that this intelligence is trying to establish mutual contact with us. Now cosmonauts and pilots are more willing to report their contacts with UFOs when they have taken place.
Unlike the rest of the world, the Soviet Union has an openness about the subject of UFOs. They even have a monthly television program devoted entirely to it. In the near future, university courses will also be available to study the subject. Several Soviet generals have already stated that there is no question as to what UFOs are. We know they are alien spacecraft.
But at the Center for UFO Studies, we have a computerized data bank that now has more than 75,000 UFO reports on it. And what is even more interesting, they come from, by latest count, from 133 countries. When you start reeling off the countries, it sounds like a roll call at the United Nations. And even more interesting, and the just numbers themselves don't mean so much, but the thing that finally convinced me that we were not dealing with nonsense is basically the caliber of the witnesses. Many of the reports are made by highly responsible people, impeccable integrity, people in technical training, air traffic controllers and military and commercial pilots. Finally got to the point, and it took me quite some time. I finally got to the point, however, where I simply said, I can't continue to call these people deluded or nuts. They are seeing something. Something is real.
The late J. Allen Hynek was an astronomer, just like I am. His background and mine are very similar. He was for many years a professor of astronomy, and so was I. And what Hynek said was, UFO research is leading us kicking and screaming into the science of the 21st century. Like Hynek, I sought to debunk the reality of UFO phenomena, and like him, discovered just the opposite.
Technology has advanced rapidly over the past 50 years for all the world to see. But in secret locations, amid tight security, the true advance of technology is hidden from public knowledge. From one such location came the stealth bomber. This futuristic aircraft is the only type known which has the ability to fly into radar-protected areas unobserved, almost without sound, to perform whatever task is necessary. The technology used in the production of the aircraft is a giant leap forward from conventional technology, and the question has to be asked, where did it come from? At one super-secret US government test facility situated in the Nevada desert, strange glowing lights are regularly seen performing aerobatic displays which are far beyond the capability of our known aircraft. They seem to be intelligently controlled. Can this be yet another example of some secret, very advanced technology? Or are the authorities hiding some exotic foreign contrivance? Here at Area 51, also known as Dreamland, is the most highly protected and secret facility in the whole of the United States. Bob Lazar, a physicist, worked on special projects within this complex and felt compelled to reveal what he saw.
They are actively and have in their possession alien spacecraft, and they are actively undergoing analysis and flying them. They set up and produce their own gravitational field. Just as the Earth holds all matter down, they produce that same field, but out of phase, and it repels itself. The effects that can cause, the way in which everything operates is by all intents and purposes magic. I mean, it is so far beyond our level of technology.
Why is such technology available only to the few and not to the whole of mankind? Have we the right to know? Are we ready for it yet? Or is the race for technological advantage more important?
Why keep a secret about probably one of the most important events in history, that there's been contact from an alien civilization? It's a significant event in history, more significant than anything.
With the tremendous distances involved, travel to the stars would seem impossible. But with man's endeavor and resourcefulness, these problems will be overcome as they always have been in the past. Scientific estimates tell us that there will be a breakthrough in space travel in the near future. When the boundaries of distance break down, the Earth will become our home, the universe our world.
From a point of physics, there are possible models today which may enable shortcuts in the space-time continuum. One of these shortcuts may be black holes. Black holes are the remainder of very large stars which have collapsed to a so-called singularity. And when stars do collapse to a singularity, they leave a tunnel, a gravitational tunnel behind, a rotating tunnel. And in this tunnel, space and time has a completely different meaning than to the normal usage that we make of space and time. Thus, in a tunnel, the so-called Einstein-Rosen bridge, time runs backwards. So a spacecraft which would dive into such a tunnel would move forwards in space and backward in time.
When we talk about hyperspaces and opening up the number of dimensions, and if we were to build a vehicle, if our science has progressed to this point, our technology, the applied science, if we develop a vehicle that is capable of doing that, traveling across the universe is not traveling through one space. It's flipping into these other spaces where the other one is only a short space away, a few inches away.